The Gripen E operates with a new agile architecture system, which allows the aircraft to be upgraded with new tactics and new capabilities seamlessly.
What we designed the system for is actually to be able to withstand the extreme max in terms of cold, so minus 40, minus 45.
10,000 research and manufacturing jobs could land in Canada if Ottawa adds the Swedish fighter jet to its military fleet.
We, as Saab, we are prepared to do that technology transfer to Canada and support that build-up.
For decades, modern fighter jets have been sold as machines of speed, stealth, and firepower. But behind the marketing has always been a quieter reality that mattered far more than dogfighting performance. Control. Who approves the sale, who controls the upgrades, who decides when parts arrive, and who ultimately has the power to say no. That reality is now being challenged in a way few expected, not by a new aircraft, but by an engine decision that has started to redraw lines of influence across NATO and beyond. What looks like a technical adjustment is turning into a political earthquake, and Canada has suddenly found itself standing at the center of it. What Rolls-Royce has done does not sound dramatic at first glance. The company confirmed the successful adaptation of its EJ230 engine, development of the EJ200 that powers the Eurofighter Typhoon, for Saab's Gripen E and F fighters. Yet inside defense ministries and aerospace firms, this announcement landed with the weight of a strategic rupture. The reason is simple and deeply uncomfortable for Washington. The EJ230 removes the last American choke point inside the Gripen program. The General Electric F414 is no longer required. With that engine goes ITAR oversight, State Department approvals, and Pentagon leverage over where the aircraft can be sold, how it can be upgraded, and under what political conditions it can be supported. Gripen's story has always been shaped by compromise. From the beginning, Sweden built a fighter optimized for cost, flexibility, and rapid turnaround, not for global power projection. Performance was never the limiting factor. Dependency was. The Gripen C and D relied on the Volvo RM12, itself a licensed version of the General Electric F404. When the Gripen E arrived, the F414 replaced it, offering roughly 22,000 pounds of thrust and excellent reliability. The aircraft improved, but the leash remained. Every export sale passed through Washington. Every major systems upgrade required American approval. When U.S. political priorities conflicted with Swedish or customer interests, deals slowed or stopped altogether. This was not a secret in Stockholm. Swedish industry had been trying to solve this problem for years. By 2020, GKN Aerospace Sweden was already involved in studies exploring how to reduce reliance on American engine technology. Several paths were considered, including upgrading the RM12, further or remaining with the F414. None of those options changed the underlying power dynamic. The EJ200, developed primarily by Rolls-Royce and already combat-proven on the Eurofighter Typhoon, stood out because it carried no American core technology. The problem was not feasibility, it was cost. Adapting that engine to Gripen meant reworking air intakes, reshaping the rear fuselage, integrating new control systems, and committing to years of testing. Without large guaranteed orders, the math never worked. Then politics shifted faster than spreadsheets could predict. Donald Trump returned to prominence with renewed trade threats, tariff pressure, and a willingness to use economic leverage against allies. Canada became a target of rhetoric that went far beyond normal diplomatic friction. European governments took note. Defense planners began asking questions that had once felt hypothetical. What happens when access to spare parts becomes a bargaining chip? What happens when export approvals are delayed for reasons unrelated to security? What happens when a partner decides loyalty has an expiration date? At the same time, the Gripen order book began to change shape. Ukraine's interest in as many as 150 fighters moved from symbolic to serious as the war ground on, and long-term force rebuilding plans took form. Canada's ongoing fighter competition created another potential anchor order. Colombia signed for 17 Gripen E and F aircraft. Thailand continued operating earlier models. The Philippines opened evaluations. Portugal appeared on industry radar. Brazil kept building Gripens domestically. Suddenly, Saab could see a future where production volumes justified a clean break from American engines. That was the moment the EJ230 moved from idea to commitment. Rolls-Royce saw an opportunity to expand its fighter engine footprint beyond the Eurofighter. Saab saw a chance to end decades of external constraint. The decision was strategic, not symbolic. The technical results matter because they reinforce the political shift rather than undermining it. The EJ230 produces substantially more thrust than the F414, with figures approaching 26,000 pounds in upgraded configuration. That translates directly into better acceleration, stronger climb performance, higher sustained speeds, and improved payload flexibility. Gripen E already demonstrates super cruise with the F414. With the EJ230, that capability extends further, particularly under heavier combat loads. Power to weight improves, range increases, combat radius expands. These are not marginal gains. They reshape how the aircraft scores in evaluations built around endurance, responsiveness, and mission flexibility. Canada's 2021 fighter evaluation still looms large in public discussion. In that assessment, Gripen scored 33% compared to the F-35's 95%. What often gets lost is that the tested aircraft used the F414 engine, because that was the only configuration available at the time. A Gripen E with the EJ230 is a materially different aircraft. Saab has not released updated scores, but defense industry sources indicate that the performance gap narrows enough to complicate arguments that rely solely on headline capability metrics, especially when cost is factored in. Gripen remains roughly half the acquisition price of the F-35 and costs about 1/4 as much to operate over its service life. This is where Canada's role stops being abstract. Rolls-Royce already operates significant aerospace facilities in Montreal, Quebec, supporting commercial aviation with established supply chains and skilled labor. Bombardier anchors the region with deep experience in aircraft manufacturing. The economic implications are difficult to ignore. Saab has already projected approximately 12,600 Canadian jobs tied to airframe and GlobalEye production. Rolls-Royce engine manufacturing could add between 3,000 and 5,000 additional high-skilled positions. Engineers, machinists, inspectors, system specialists, supply managers. These are long-term roles that anchor communities and generate sustained tax revenue. Once embedded, they are politically difficult to dismantle because doing so would hollow out an entire regional economy. Strategically, the consequences run deeper. Without American components, there is no legal authority for Washington to block exports, delay approvals, or restrict upgrades. Diplomatic pressure remains possible, but its effectiveness weakens when it reinforces the very argument it seeks to counter. Every tariff threat strengthens the case for autonomy. Ukraine understands this vulnerability more acutely than most. Any fighter supply chain dependent on U.S. approval carries political risk unrelated to battlefield needs. The EJ230-powered Gripen removes that uncertainty. Sweden can deliver, Britain can support, Canada could eventually manufacture. Supply flows remain insulated from third-party bargaining. Colombia's initial aircraft use F414 engines, but the long-term picture is not fixed. Future upgrades and maintenance pathways could shift if the EJ230 proves reliable in service. Regional neighbors are watching. Peru continues evaluations. Argentina's long-standing issues with British export restrictions complicate its options, yet alternative configurations weaken those constraints. Chile considers diversification beyond F-16 dependence. Latin America has become fertile ground for arguments centered on autonomy rather than allegiance. Thailand offers a practical example, operating Gripens. Since 2011, Thai planners appreciate the platform's performance while remaining frustrated by limitations tied to American approvals. An EJ-230-powered fleet enables domestic upgrades, local system integration, and operational tailoring without external permission, a valuable capability for a country that has long balanced relationships among major powers. The Philippines presents a different calculus. As a treaty ally hosting U.S. forces, alignment remains strong, yet political volatility has repeatedly strained that relationship. Defense planners know reliance limits options. American fighters embed permanent dependence on goodwill. Gripens, powered by European engines, offer capability without exposure to shifting diplomatic winds. Portugal adds another dimension. As a NATO member with tight budgets, cost matters as much as performance. Lower acquisition and operating expenses free resources for training, munitions, and readiness. Political leverage matters too. When procurement discussions involve pressure, rather than persuasion, having an option immune to external veto changes the conversation. Across these cases, the same conclusion keeps resurfacing. Sovereignty carries measurable value. Every government watching trade, threats, and political coercion reassesses defense dependencies built during a different era. The EJ-230-powered Gripen provides a path away from those dependencies while maintaining interoperability and credible combat capability. This is not symbolism. The Pentagon cannot restrict technology. It does not control. It cannot block exports governed by foreign law. It cannot weaponize supply chains it does not own. Rolls-Royce is British. Saab is Swedish. Bombardier is Canadian. The Gripen E with the EJ-230 becomes a fully non-American solution in a market long shaped by U.S. dominance. What does that mean for Canada's fighter decision? How does it change Ukraine's long-term air strategy? And if Washington can no longer decide who flies what, how does that reshape the global arms market? If this kind of shift matters to you, subscribe to the channel and stay with us, because stories like this are only just beginning. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next one.